All right. This is where we left off. Your character, Xuana, the elf with a few secrets up her sleeve, has just entered the Bald Bunyan Inn. She looks around, and you see inside the inn some fairly disreputable characters. This is a working class area. There are a few who might be adventurers like yourself. And I'd like you to make a perception check. Okay, go ahead and roll for that. Unfortunately, you got a 4, so you do not see the extremely bad-smelling individual. He is bald, he has a patchy beard, and he looks like he hasn't bathed in about 100 years. No, I'm kidding. He is human, but he smells very bad, and he says, "Hey, Elf Lassie, why don't you come over and join me for a drink?" You tell him to piss off. Go ahead and make an intimidation check if you don't mind. That is a 17. So tell me how you'd like to intimidate this man. All right, so you pull out your +1 dagger, the one that is in the shape of a dragon's tail, and put it to his throat. And you say to him, "I am drinking alone tonight." He puts his hands, his big meaty hands up and says, no worries, no worries. And he backs off and lets you enter the inn. You look in the corner, and there you see something that doesn't quite seem to match the rest of the inn. It's a gentleman. He's very pale. He is wearing very fine clothes. In other words, he does not fit in this particular inn. And he's surrounded by 5 young women of various races, and they are fawning over them, and he is laughing. Apparently it's something one of them said. What would you like to do? All right, you walk forward, and you throw on the inn table a small scroll. The sound at the end stops, and the man looks to the scroll, looks up at you, and he says, "Well, hello, my dear. Won't you join us for a drink?" Okay, you tell him that your only interest is inside that scroll. He lazily, you notice his fingers seem impossibly long as he pulls open the scroll and glances at it slightly. You, of course, know what it says. It's a wanted poster for information leading to the arrest or death of the individual responsible for the brutal murders of several young women in the city of Balethorn. He looks up at you and he says, "I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what it is you would like from me. I know what I would like from you. And I need you to make a wisdom saving throw." That is an 11, and even with your bonus, unfortunately that is not enough. Suddenly a warm feeling goes through your entire body, and you feel warm and safe and peaceful. You feel like you should trust him, and you should probably do what he says. And he says, "Tina, leave." And dejected, the young woman gets up and walks away, and he gestures for you to sit next to him. You sit next to him, and he says, "You are a very beautiful young wood elf, but I sense there is more to you than meets the eye." And his eyes flick up to your intricate headscarf. And I'm going to allow you now to make another wisdom saving throw. Unfortunately, that is a 4. And even though you sense something is wrong, he should not be looking at your headscarf. You seem to trust him. And you smile, and he says, "You know, I think you and I will become the very best of friends. But you know, I suspect you have some unpleasant items on you. If you was to have anything that was to, I don't know, destroy the undead, you know what would be really helpful right now is if you put them on the table." So you reach into your vest and you pull out the long ash stake that you carved the night before and hardened and blackened in the fire, and you put it on the table. You reach into the other side of your vest and you pull out a long chain made of silver that you had planned on wrapping around your hand that might help. And you reach into a small pocket secreted in your left traveling trouser pocket and pull out a vial of holy water that a priest of Corellion had blessed the night before. And you lay these items on the table. He looks at them and he looks at you and smiles and he says, "Most impressive. I see that you have covered all your bases. But now that you are unencumbered, don't you agree that this place is hardly the place to get a good drink? Why don't you come with me outside?" And he turns to the other women and he says, "You are dismissed." And some of them weeping, they leave. And he takes you out the back door. The cook and the barkeep seem to hardly notice as you walk out into the back alley. The back alley is somewhat wider than you would normally expect them to be. It is filled with refuse and discarded furniture and some scraps of clothing and a cat meowing in the distance. And he turns back to you and he says, "Now, what about that drink? And I would like you to make one more saving throw." Natural 20. And you see this man lean back and his fangs begin to elongate and he snarls and he is moving in towards your neck, and you suddenly realize this is wrong. You are Xuana. You are Xuana of the Drow, and you will not suffer this type of attack. What would you like to do? Okay, let's roll for initiative. Ooh, he gets a 4 and you get a 13, so you go first. What would you like to do? All right, you pull out your +1 dagger that you had gotten with your adventure down in the Underdark, and you slash at his throat. That is a 14, and unfortunately that is not going to hit. He snatches back out of the way, and now his face becomes feral and disgusting. You see that he is old and evil and sly, and he is going to slash at you with his clawed fingers. But he only rolls an 11, and even with his bonuses, that's not going to do it. It rakes against your studded leather armor, but cannot pierce it. It is your turn. Interesting. Now, if you move there, you will take an attack of opportunity from him. Okay. As you disengage, he slashes. That is a 16 with his bonus. That is going to beat your armor. He does. Ooh, unfortunately, he rolled rather well. That is 6 points of damage to you. His claws rake at you as you try to disengage, and he laughs and he goes, "I love it when my prey runs." But yes, you have now gotten to the discarded furniture, and I want you to make an athletics check. Okay, that is a 16. So you grab the stick, the chair, and you smash it against the wall. And yes, you now have a somewhat janky but serviceable stake. What are you going to do? That is a 19 with your bonus. You need to roll 1d6. That is a 5, and I'm going to give you +4 because it is a wooden weapon towards his heart. However, in order to fully stake him in a single attack, you need to roll a 19 or a 20 naturally. However, that is 9 points of damage against him. You jam it into his chest, and he screams at you, letting out a howl of terror and anger, and black, visceral blood begins to seep out of his fine clothing. And it is his turn. He is going in for a bite on you. But he rolls an 11. He's trying to go in and bite your neck, but you are keeping him at bay with that stake, and you're working it into his belly, and he is so angry at you, but he cannot hit you. What would you like to do now? All right. It fell. That is a 17 with your bonus, and with your bonus, you take your +1 dagger and you jam it into his neck and roll for damage. It's only a 2 with your +2 damage plus your +1. So that is 5 points of damage. You have now done 14 points of damage to this vampire, and he screams at you. And now he is going to use his special attack, which allows him to attack multiple times in a single round. Fortunately, he rolled a 3, 17, and a 2. So you were actually quite fortunate. Out of the 3, only one hit. That was a claw, bite. So the second claw does strike, however. And oh my goodness, he's rolling really good on his damage. That's another 6 points of damage to you. You have taken 12 points of damage. That's nearly half of your hit points. You are feeling it. You are pretty banged up. What are you going to do now? Yes, I will say that there is some vegetation coming out, kind of growing in craggy little places in the corner. So you cast Tingling Vines, and he is going to save, and he does not fail. He fails. So out of these withered little vines in the corner erupt out these vines that wrap him up and impede his movement, and he is considered to be grappled. And it is his turn. He is going to try to break from the grapple, and he does not do so. He is snapping some of the vines, but there's more whipping around him and holding him in place. And so he cannot reach you to attack. What are you going to do? All right. That is an 18. So you take your improvised weapon, your stake. The splinters are biting into your bare hands as you drive it forward. And you do... Ooh, that's a 5 plus your 2. That's 7 points of damage. 8, 9, 10, 11. So he has now taken 21 points of damage. He is very injured, and he is not loving this. And by the way, your dagger is sticking out of his neck. He actually is going to pull out your dagger and begin to cut himself free. Going to give him, oh, that's a natural 20. So he just bursts out of your tangling vine, and he snarls at you. Fortunately, that has also taken his attack. He is going to move with unnatural speed, so he is right next to you. It's your turn. Okay. That is a 16, and so you strike. You take your improvised weapon. Another 5. Everyone is rolling really well on the D6s today. That is a total of 7, so you have done 28 points of damage. You are just slamming this into his body, and he's screaming and screaming and screaming, and the wood seems to be impairing his ability to heal, though you do notice it looks like where you stabbed him in the neck is beginning to start to close over. He is going to attack, and he gets a 3. It's almost like he's been losing a lot of blood, and even though he's slashing at you with his clawed hands, he is not able to strike. Your turn. That is an 18 plus 2. That is 20. So, tell me how you do this. All right. You knock him to the ground with your foot. You raise up your improvised stake from the refuse, and you say, "This is for those women, you son of a bitch," and you drive it down into his heart. He screams, and you watch in rapid succession as his face becomes old, then withered, then a corpse, and then is turned into dust. Yes, you certainly can. You investigate the clothes that are remaining, and you find a locket. A locket. Go ahead and roll a perception check. Okay, 14 is sufficient. You recognize that it is the locket of one of the victims that he had. He also has 12 gold on him that you might want to pocket for yourself, and he has a curious scroll in a language you don't recognize. You think perhaps if you take it to one of your friends in the guild, they might be able to read it for you. But you think that if you take this locket back, you may be able to collect the bounty. And you, Xuana, will be a hero.